Hey guys, quick note for this episode. For some reason, while recording, Ed's track simply cuts off with about 5 minutes left in the main discussion, and then our Love, Loathe, or Live With segment. Now that missing segment is now apparently floating around in the Oort cloud somewhere in space, so unfortunately the episode does end a bit abruptly. However, we kind of mostly had already said what we wanted to say already anyway, so we decided to just go ahead and post the show without the missing chunk. On this episode, we discuss the recent election, the swing back to the conservative parties, and what it means for Thailand.
So if you've been watching the headlines recently and wondered what it all means, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap. This is the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 and was only in country for 5 days before I got attacked by a monkey.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. It was in Chiang Kong, I think, on the border, northern border, and yeah, it attacked me in a cave, and I hated monkeys ever since. Vicious little bastards.
That's a great Thai story. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract over 25 years ago. Fell in love with using Thai traffic jams to practice my deep breathing exercises, so I never left.
Man, I'm telling you, it's my $1 million idea that I want anyone to take up is I think there should be a special form of yoga that you do before you go into any bank or government office in Thailand. Just like deep breathing exercise to lower your pulse, reduce your heart rate.
I do this. I'm not a driver, but I take taxis all the time, and I hit a traffic jam unexpectedly. I'm thinking about this because on the bonus show, I told my ice bath story. Yeah. But when I was supposed to meet my buddy, at the ice bath place. I walked out and there was just a bricked in traffic jam outside my place. Oh. And I had to get in a taxi, and I'm just sitting there as the clock ticks down, and we have an appointment at a certain time, and I hate that. I don't want to be late, and there's nothing you can do. No, you can't do anything. And so honestly, I mean, this is not ironic. I'm just sitting there breathing in, breathe out, breathe in. And it's funny, after 25 years, it's the same as it was. It's a here we go again thing. Yeah. Where you're, okay, this is Bangkok and I just have to eat this. I just have to calm down.
Some days you just got to eat shit.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
All right, we want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get every episode a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about my experience with an ice bath at a place just off of Sukhumvit and the associated endorphin rush that came with it, Greg's experience riding the almost fully renovated Green Mile bike path between Lumpini and Benchikiti Park, my experience installing the powerful and slightly scary OpenClaw AI assistant on my computer, and a quick discussion of the rules around not being able to buy alcohol during a Thai election. To learn how to become a patron and get all this good stuff, plus full access to over 800 bonus and regular back episodes, click the support button at the top of our website.
That's right. And don't forget, if you listen to us on Spotify, you can hear all the bonus shows there as well. If you're a patron, simply link your Patreon account to your Spotify account. Add our new feed titled Bangkok Podcast, Badass Patrons Only, to hear the regular and bonus shows in the same place from the same feed. Class A.
Cool.
All right, on this episode, we are kind of obligated to do a wrap-up of the big national election that took place just a week ago. Now, keep in mind, we record these shows a week in advance, so as we record, we've had a few days to absorb what happened. But unfortunately, for many young progressive thinkers in Thailand who are hoping for change, and quite the opposite to the groundswell the progressive cause saw in the last election, the old guard stubbornly held on this time around, which of course means there are all kinds of theories going around as to what happened and why and who's to blame and what's next. So Ed, being the senior poli-sci analyst here at BPHQ, is going to give us his take on the whole shebang while I listen intently and nod along, pretending to understand the nuances of Thai politics. So Ed, what happened?
Very good question. It's funny. We've talked on the show. We did our quiz show. I am teaching a class now in Thai society, so I have had the benefit of I lectured on this a couple days ago, this exact topic of what happened. So I've got a lot of thoughts. Obviously, we're not in an academic setting, but I'll try to throw interesting ideas out there. So listeners, before the election, we didn't do a main show about it, but on the bonus show, we talked about how the election appeared to be basically a 3-horse race between the Progressive Party, which is currently called the People's Party and used the color orange, and Pheu Thai, which is the Shinawatra clan, the kind of economic populist farmer policy party, which I think their color is red, I believe. And then the third faction is the Boom Jai Thai faction, led by the current prime minister, that I feel like they're not super conservative and they're not super military, but they kind of now represent that faction. So more traditionalist. So we'll just call them the conservative faction, BJT. Okay. And before the election, it was kind of a 3-horse race, like roughly equal, but most polls thought that the orange faction, the progressive faction, was going to win, as they did in the last election. But the result was that the conservative faction basically crushed. You can argue and get into the details of the constituency, right. Versus the party list. But the bottom line is the conservative faction did way better than people expected. And correspondingly, the People's Party and the Pheu Thai faction did worse than people expected. And so, as you've said in your intro, if you're a young progressive, it's bad news.
Yeah. I think, we talked recently to our friend Tao, who is a member of the progressive parties, the progressive side of things. And he on the show predicted that their cause would get a lot more seats and a lot more votes than they actually ended up getting. And I think that was pretty easy to believe, because the last time around, it was kind of a shock how much the progressive side of things took away from the old established parties. And, I've talked to a couple of friends here who are Thai or who have Thai partners, and the Thai, they're pissed, and they're talking about all kinds of things, vote buying and there's secret ballots and like all kinds of nefarious stuff. So I haven't read much about it or personally seen it, but I've been told that people are angry.
Well, there's kind of two paths. There's two angles here. One angle is that this was a legitimate victory. So the BJT, the conservative faction, they just won straight up. And so that's one thing. And then you have to talk about how or why that happened. So I'm gonna focus mostly on that theory. But it turns out that in the last few days, it's only been 3 days since the election, there's been a lot of evidence, with a lot of real evidence, or at least examples of ballot counting inconsistencies or mistakes. So as we record this is a developing story. And I think the anger you're talking about is the sense that this outcome just can't be true. Mm-hmm. And these things, in elections, this is a very difficult topic, because when people think you're going to win and then you get crushed, sometimes it's just hard to believe so you're like, what? This has to be a scam.
Yeah, well, if only there were other options, other similar stories you could point to.
Yeah, that's right. But so for me, it's all, it always comes down to the evidence and the rule of law. And we have an election commission here, which is designed to deal with complaints like this. And at least from what I've seen on Twitter, people seem to have evidence. So there's a threshold for how many complaints there has to be before they actually do a recount. Oh, okay. So as we record, this is a wildly developing story. So whether there actually ends up being any type of recount, we don't know yet. But in a week, there might be So when listeners, when you hear this, it might already be out that there's a recount. We can't say.
Right. Yeah.
So let's just operate on the assumption that the Conservative Party legitimately won. And so the question is, what could possibly explain a legitimate conservative win? And so I've got a couple theories. So this is what I talked to my students about. Okay. One obvious thing which people talked about before the election is simply the fact that the conflict with Cambodia was used by the current prime minister to stoke nationalism And so everyone thought that there might be a rallying around the flag effect.
Yes.
It's just people did not think it would be like, people thought, okay, BJT is not that popular. Nationalism might bring them up to equality. That, that's why people were saying, okay, so this Cambodia thing might give them a chance to be equal. But in this case, they actually crushed. So they clearly won. So it's kind of the obvious explanation is that they got more mileage out of the nationalism in response to the conflict with Cambodia than people expected. Like the Thais really rallied around the current prime minister because he was quite strict and harsh and used pretty extreme language in defense of Thai soil.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from a lot of people, and and they take it even further. Like, isn't it strange how the situation with Cambodia died down so quickly after the election was called? Things like that. But
right.
I mean, it's not a totally far out theory, right? Like these kind of things, these rallying cries, these nationalist sort of causes that cause people to rally around a leader or something like that is. I mean, that's been used for thousands of years, so it's not outside of the realm.
Yeah. So I mean, you're raising another kind of conspiratorial angle, which is that maybe the conflict or the stoking was a political strategy. And, like I said, I remember in August or September, people were saying, oh, the prime minister is going to use this in the election, or he's exaggerating this. So, I mean, if this was a strategy all along, all we can say is that it worked. If that was the strategy, it worked. But that's just one theory, and it seems unlikely that theory alone, because again, BJT previously was a strong minor party, but nowhere close to being a plurality. So I'm not sure that theory alone could explain it. So I've got a couple other theories.
Okay.
One thing I think that people don't value enough, but this is standard kind of American thinking, that if you're in office, you have this incumbent advantage. You have name and face recognition. And I got to say this, my students, they're young and I think they lean progressive. And when I asked them, we were just talking informally, I didn't make them all reveal, but they did seem to be leaning towards the People's Party. And I was like, who are you going to vote for? They're like, People's Party. And I said, oh, you like Natapong? And they said, who?
Really?
I was like, Natapong, he's the candidate. And they're like, oh. And I think that, and again, no critic, like I've heard him in interviews, I think he's great, but he doesn't have like a lot of charisma. He's different from Pita. In 2023, Pita, or Kun Pita, I should call him to be polite, that dude is got game. And, he's got Clinton-esque and Obama-esque personality. And it's probably why he got banned by the Constitutional Court. And
yeah, right. He's
what I mean?
Too likable.
Yeah, he's too good. And Natapong is my kind of candidate, smart, whatever. But he doesn't have the speaking, he doesn't have the game. And so I mean, I think that could play a role. I think that the fact that the current prime minister, he's been around for 30 years in Thai politics. Everyone knows him.
Right.
And then he's been prime minister since I think August or September. So that's not he doesn't have the full advantage of incumbency. But I think people discount, or in this case in Thailand, they don't factor in the fact that the current prime minister just has a huge advantage being the prime minister. Everyone knows his name, everyone knows his face.
It's funny you say Natapong, like, and this is hugely anecdotal, and I don't follow Thai politics that closely anymore anyway. But if Natapong came into my house right now and sat down next to me, I wouldn't know who he was. I have no idea.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. And it's not necessarily his fault either. I just think this is a factor that people are discounting. Or in U.S. politics, we recognize this is huge. In the last American election, the tragic joke among Democrats was that if you look at Google Trends, the week before the election, Americans were Googling who is Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Because she has, for an American, her name is a little bit weird. She was a very low key vice president. So the one thing Trump has is name recognition. So I think that's a factor. But kind of the big story. So in my basically, I had to teach my class about 24 hours after the election. So in my quick analysis, and I was looking at Thai websites and doing translations, a lot of people were talking about something that Thai people refer to as Ban Yai, the Ban Yai system. So Ban Yai translates very simply into just big house.
The big house.
So it doesn't, the name doesn't really reveal what they're talking about. But in Thai politics, when people talk about Ban Yai, they're talking about the effect of local families and clans on the politics in that region. So in the States, I think we would probably use the expression, we'd probably just say the local machine. And it just refers to areas, cities or regions that have a long history of politics with certain families or people just dominating. So if you go to Korat, or if you go to this city, or in the US it might be, if you're in Southern Illinois, it's this family. They've dominated. It's the cousin is the mayor. The brother is the state representative.
Right.
And you just
the AG and
it's like clannish or borderline mafia-ish. So it's like there's basically like a local mafia that they've just for 50 years they've controlled the local. So Thais call this Ban Yai, and I think it refers to the idea that these clans it's actually a big house. So, some Thai provinces are huge, and it'll be like, okay, if you want to get anything done in Chiang Rai, you got to go talk to someone who's in this family. Like
they'll say like, this is like blah, blah, blah's province.
That's right. It's just like that. And everyone who grows up there, they understand this. And so this whole Ban Yai system, it's, you could make an argument that it's more democratic because it's about local control. And I do think that historically in Thailand, there's been a problem with Bangkok being elitist and ignoring the provinces. So it's like, I think the Ban Yai system grew up because people who stayed and lived in the provinces realized that, hey, Bangkok's not going to do shit for us unless we organize.
Okay, interesting.
So you get local fixers. Like basically the Ban Yai system just means people who can get shit done, or maybe they understand Bangkok, or they have a friend in Bangkok. So if you're from Nakhon Nowhere and you don't know anyone in Bangkok, you're not going to file the paperwork. I'm going to file the paperwork to get the Bangkok grant to do this. There's sewage leaking into my farm, so I'm going to apply for a national grant. Right. No, you're not. Like you don't know anything about that. You're going to go to the local dude who's a member of this family, and that guy knows the connections or the strings to pull.
Sure.
And patronage. That's exactly right. So Ban Yai refers to a patronage system. So I mean, it could be you could blame Bangkok elites for not taking care of the provinces, so they have to take care of themselves. And it just turns out that this conservative faction is filled with these bosses. So it's like, so it is a regular political party, but if you look at the actual characters and the movers and shakers in the conservative faction, it's a lot of 70-year-old dons of this clan and that clan. Right. So you kind of have to kind of know Thai politics. You have to be able to look at the roster and go, oh shit, these are all like players. Like these are Pauls, with like machinations and strategies, and they know how to hold on to power. Like they've been playing, their grandfather was the Puyai in their district, and so the party is just filled with old timers.
Yeah, they're grandfathered into the power structure.
That's right. And so there's actually kind of a interesting political story here, where I think that the progressive faction really represents young, idealistic, often well-educated people who they have a list of policies and ideas. We're going to change Thailand in these 10 ways. And I went to Oxford. And then there's these 70-year-old dudes who've never left their province.
We've been talking about this on Discord a little bit with some of the patrons, and it's just, the thing I just keep coming back to, and you see it in every country, and it's not a surprise, and I can't really blame them, but it's amazing how frightened old, entrenched men get when they see the new power coming in their rearview mirror, and they'll do anything to hold on to power. It's not like groundbreaking theory, but it's amazing to what lengths they'll go to ensure that the status quo doesn't change.
Well, I would offer just a slight correction. It's not fear. It's not fear. They're gloating. They're laughing.
Really?
They're laughing at young people. They're not afraid. They understand. Wait, so these guys are not ideological. They don't care about policy. They care about staying popular in their province, and they care about status and power.
Yeah.
So they're laughing at these well-educated Bangkokers. They're not afraid.
They're scared about losing the power, especially.
No. I mean, I understand your point. No, they don't want to lose power, and you're right when you say they'll do anything to hold on to power. That is correct.
Right.
But they're not scared. They're laughing because they know how to play the game is the thing. But you're right.
Even after the last election when they got trounced.
Well, no, I understand your point. So I mean, I guess you're right. They could be a little bit scared, but in this scenario, this is a victory for these old players of the system.
Right.
And maybe I don't know what, maybe they reorganized themselves since 2023. So why they didn't perform in 2023 and performed here, that's a question. But I do think that, like I pointed out, in 2023, they had PETA, they had Kun PETA, and there was this massive nationwide enthusiasm.
Yeah, I know. Dudes like Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, that's right. It just overwhelmed I think the old way of doing things, and I think the progressive faction getting smacked down by the Constitutional Court and PETA getting banned, I do think it just depressed. I was chatting with my students about this, and they were nodding their heads. I just think that they lost motivations, and I just think a lot of progressive got depressed by the eventual outcome. So they won last time. Then they got smacked down by the Constitutional Court. Then Puatai basically backstabbed them and made an agreement, deal with the devil with the conservative faction, and so I think it was just so depressing that it was hard for the Progressive Party to just rebuild and get people to believe again. So I think there's a crisis of confidence amongst the progressives, which is sad because this is a long fight, and I think from our conversations with Tao. We know that the leaders of the progressive faction, I think, are smart, and they're thinking long term. So they're like, no, this is a 10, 20-year struggle. But I think a lot of their voters don't understand how hard it's going to be to dislodge these old dudes that you're talking about. This is a long-term project.
I totally get that, and I agree with it because you can only see the system rigged against you so many times to pull the wool over your eyes or force you to take a step back before you go, you throw your hands up and you're just like, you know what, fuck it. I got a life to live.
That's right.
I can't get too deep into this. Otherwise I'm going to turn around and I'll be 50 years old and I'm going to still be fighting the same fight that I was fighting when I was a university student, as noble as that might be. But
people forget that, Future Forward got banned, including its leaders, for 10 years. Yeah. So the first wave of progressive leaders got banned. Then Move Forward got banned, and their leaders got banned. So the progressive faction is on their third and fourth string.
Yeah.
At
this point, I'd be like, fuck it, I'm out.
Their leaders have been banned. 2 generations of their leaders have been banned.
I'm done.
So the idea that it's going to be hard for them to keep up the fight or maintain. So I think there's, people like Kun Tao, there's people, their leaders are still fighting, but when you've already lost your A team and your B team, it's hard to keep up the enthusiasm in the country. And I think so, if you factor that in with the nationalism thing, it could explain the overperformance. Now, the big asterisks are all these questions about the vote count. So,
can I give you my theory about everything first before we get into the vote count?
Sure.
My theory is pretty simplistic compared to yours, but I just kind of think that, now I don't know the vote count and how many people turned out or what the percentage was, but I just think that after so many ups and downs and fights and coups and shutdowns and curfews and whatever, I think that people at this point just, it's related to what we were just talking about, but I think people at this point, they would rather have stability than change. And I think a lot of people are just like, we haven't had any malls burning down lately. There's not been any wide scale protests. I'm raising my family. I got a job to concentrate on. I'm fine with that.
I think you're largely correct, but I would fine tune the answer.
Okay.
It's not that people who before wanted change are saying now I will settle for stability. That's not it. It's the people that were willing to fight for change are demotivated, and the people that always wanted things to stay the same are more motivated. So the conservative faction that don't want change, they're more motivated by the current prime minister because they finally got a conservative prime minister from that faction. So they got more motivated, whereas I think the progressive got demotivated. But I'm not sure. I mean, the way you explained it, you made it sound like people switched sides or gave up. And so I'm going to vote for the conservative faction now. I doubt that happened.
No. I think they just said like, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm done.
Yeah, that's it. So it's not. I'm gonna take stability versus change. I don't think that's what happened. I just think the conservative part of the country got motivated by the nationalism. So they're fired up because of the nationalism, and the leaders of the progressive faction, because their leadership is decimated from the bans, and because that they didn't know how to respond to the Cambodia crisis properly. They're very aware that they were possibly getting outmaneuvered. That you end up with this kind of disastrous situation where the progressive faction is demotivated and turnout is down. So the overall turnout for the election was way down. It 3 years ago, it was, or about 2.5 years ago, it was 75%, which is very high.
Wow.
But this time the turnout was 62%.
Oh,
It's down by 13%, which is huge. So it's the demotivation of the change vote that I think is the explainer. Now, again, we cannot solve this on this show, but there's a lot of stories of irregularities in the vote count. So we might get a recount. So and I don't, the recount is not going to change the result, but it could close the gap.
Okay.
You know, it's possible maybe, because right now the way it stands, you know, it's roughly, it's like BJT 200, People's Party 100, Poli 85. So right now, the conservative faction, it just crushed. You know, it was way ahead. So who knows? Maybe there could be a recount. It could close the gap a little bit, but it seems unlikely. Unless there's just some massive conspiracy, it seems very unlikely we're going to get some change in the outcome.
Well, what are some of the conspiracies going around, and do they range from like wild to believable or dangerous to?
Well, I think the standard conspiracy is just that there was a lot of vote buying, you know, buying of votes, and this explains, you know, BJT, you know, doing better. But there's larger conspiracies about how the members of the election commission were chosen. So all of this stuff is super political because, you know, people aren't stupid, and if you have an independent commission that can evaluate elections, that's a very powerful thing. So it matters who is on the election commission. And so there's been all these strategic moves by BJT in replacing this person. So the larger conspiracy is that maybe somehow the election commission has been compromised, and so that allowed them to actually alter votes. So people have been presenting evidence of just tallies that don't add up, just horrible miscounts, and the theory is possibly supporters of the Conservative Party realized that they own the election commission, so they could get away with massive voter fraud. But again, this is all going to come down to the evidence, and most of what I've seen is compelling but anecdotal. You know, not widespread abuse. But we'll see. Again, it's a developing story, as they say on the news.
It's funny how like I'm not a historical expert on this stuff, but I think we certainly saw it in the United States, where there's sort of like they're reaching deep behind the facade to get to the levers of power behind the scenes, and that's how they're sort of pulling the strings from way back, where I haven't really seen anyone do that before, but.
Yeah, in general, I'm not very conspiratorial, but I was chatting on Discord with some people who they made a good point that when rule of law is weak and there's this deference to authority and the investigative reporting and free speech is not very strong. The press is not very strong. It basically means the elite. the elite can get away with more stuff. So, I do think it's true in Thailand. If you have like quote unquote a crazy conspiracy theory about the whole election,
Right.
the whole election is rigged. I think here it's not so crazy.
I saw you talking about it on Discord. You're like, actually, maybe
because there is a free press here, but investigative reporting is way less a thing here than in the States.
Yeah.
There's just not a spotlight on powerful people here as there are in the West.
Totally.
So I do think elites, they're operating in the shadows, which means they can probably get away with more shit.
My favorite quote about Thailand's free press is someone once said, of course we have free press. There's just certain things you're not allowed to report on.
That's right. Yeah, that's roughly it. So I think here, if you happen to be conspiracy minded, I think you're more rational here than back home. Even though some conspiracies back home do end up being true, of course. So it's hard to calibrate this stuff. I hope there are some recounts. And I read just today. I read a post where someone said, hey, they should have a recount just to boost confidence, which is that's how I would think about it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And that's where the episode cuts off. So we'll just leave it there. Our good friend Inna told us on Discord that she blames Ed's new AI assistant that he installed last week. And I got to say, it's a compelling theory. Gremlins! Anyway, sorry about that, everyone, but let's wrap it up.
A final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping in our never-ending quest for cool content. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages. Unless, of course, you're an agent who sends endless pitch emails on behalf of a client.
That's right. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. Send us a voicemail through the website. We'll feature that on the show. Find me on Blue Sky, BKK Greg. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll see you back here next week.